We are now streaming live. Welcome, everybody. This is the last of our 5-part love series, and I'm thrilled to actually today have my chart read, my love chart read by Anna Poirier, love astrologer. And we are going to dive into, oops, I forgot my little notes here. Anna, if you want to just go ahead and just kind of share a little bit about yourself as I'm pulling up my notes.
I will do that. Yeah. And I'm realizing, um, yeah, so we're recording. Okay. Sorry that
No,
finished
that's
that
okay. That's
kind
okay.
of, um, so yeah, I have I'm a very sort of unique blend of astrology, healing, yoga, herbs, food, just kind of the whole gamut. And, essentially, I really support mostly like conscious creatives, change makers, people who are here. They're curious about their path and where they're going, both inside of a relationship and outside of it. Um, and they want to use the tools that are available to them. And I feel that that's through the lens of astrology, which is what we're going to be focusing on today, but also through the lens of the body. Really big focus of mine. So yeah, I've been at it for like, dare I say, almost 30 years. That's kind of crazy. Not quite, but
That's
more like,
amazing.
but over 25. Um,
And she's
so
got so many other talents that she can't fit into this
yeah,
call.
yeah,
So,
I'm not going to bore y'all with that. But like and some of what I do is really weaving them together. Like I have something called a body blueprint, and that's where we use astrology, but through your health, and that just there's a lot of interweavings. And part of it is we can look at, so in this situation, this is actually a little bit of a unique situation, Danielle, only because um I not that I certainly have done it, but in most of my sort of love astrology or couples astrology work, I will be doing a reading, so to say, of both charts, right? Of like two people, of the relational thing. But this will be kind of fun because we're looking at Danielle's chart, kind of like just giving you an idea of what's available and what's accessed here, even without, we're not, what's that?
a teaser.
Yeah, like a teaser, exactly. And that your chart offers a ton of information. I'm just gonna say that. Like I've been doing a lot of readings lately. And there's a lot of different types of readings we can do. It seems like a lot of people have had their birthdays lately. I've been reaching out and want to have what's called a solar return, which is flavor of the next year. So we're looking at Danielle's birth chart. Just want to be clear on that. And really like some of the key parts that if you've been following the last 4 sessions done, that we've touched upon. So we'll be looking at some of those, and hopefully the idea is that Danielle walks away with maybe some deeper understanding and clarity from a different lens about herself, and that all of you get to also have some clarity and understanding in a different way just of how this all works. So
Experience Anna's genius in
that's very sweet. That's very, thank you. And I want to say also happy spring, happy solar new year, actually, because in astrology, this is the new year. This is equinox. This is the start. Great time for us to be doing this because spring has sprung, and that gets some of that Mars energy going for sure, because Aries is ruled by Mars. So
I love it.
I just want to make sure I got your chart pulled up. Then I also have some notes. Danyelle, if I'll just say as we go through this, feel free to ask questions or interject or anything
Okay.
like that. And I really felt like it was appropriate to start talking about your rising sign, actually, which is your Libra rising. And and part of the reason I wanted to start there is because we look, and I don't want to get too in the weeds, but your rising sign tells us what planet rules your chart. And then it shows us where that chart ruler shows up in your life. So because you're Libra rising, your chart ruler is actually Venus, which
Mm.
is, appropriate given your line of work and your focus. But then like I said, we look at what, what that is and where it is. Before I even go there, I also feel like it's nice to share a little bit about the rising because we didn't talk tremendously about it. I'm trying to remember. We didn't talk a ton about it. Yeah.
We didn't.
So I am going to weave it in here because it is a factor in who we attract, also potentially who we're attracted to, who we're drawn to. And I mean that in the broader scope too, because your rising is, it's how you appear. So it has to do with your appearance. And then it also has to do with like the energy that you put off, or you could see it as the aura that you put off.
Mm.
It's a lot about initial impressions. It's how others see you, but not always how you see yourself. And it can be kind of almost like a block, like like you're unconscious to it, but other people see it. And once you kind of harness it and claim it, I think there's a lot more power and potency that you have, both in the realm of maybe a healthier attraction through your aura. Like your aura is now more emanating from the higher energies of your rising rather than potentially the lower energies of your rising.
Okay.
And that, oh, there was something else I was going to say about that. Oh, well, anyway, so yeah, it can it's again bringing things to awareness, and then you are a little bit more empowered in that way. And you get a better understanding of this when I talk about it a little bit. But as I'm speaking, those of you watching, and especially if you know Danyelle, you'll be like, oh, because I'm gonna talk a little bit about this Libra rising. You'll probably be like, oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that in her. Mm-hmm. So, part of some of the traits of a Libra rising would be charming, graceful, really presenting in a very beautiful, refined aesthetic. And also peacemaking, like harmonizing energetically, feeling like, and other people generally will feel good on an energetic level, like there's that charm, right? And relationships relating are like a real strong focus with this Libra rising, and really any strong Libra placement, that relationships, which is beautiful and wonderful. And then the lower expression can be such a deep desire for that balance and that harmony and everything, that it goes into people pleasing, and it goes into,
Definitely.
not asserting so much. Even things like expressing anger, or even knowing, like, and I would say asserting yourself, your desires, your wants, but there's also the part of that where there's an indecisiveness. So like the Libra rising could be like, I don't even know what I don't even know what it is. So there's an evolution there that happens. And that said, there could be an attraction to a drawing in towards the Aries archetype, Doesn't mean that it would have to be an actual Aries man,
Right.
but some of the traits of the Aries, which is like direct, assertive, you know, hopefully healthy expression of anger, like being able to like be honest, authentic. There's a certainly decisive. I think maybe I said that, but that
I
and that
find
can,
especially that women are around.
yeah.
Lately, I'm very drawn to my friends that are very direct and very like logical, especially because of this phase where I'm in my life. I find that I can get in the weeds and then they're very direct and logical and clear.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that helps me because a lot of times people will be like, Danielle, you're so indecisive. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to like take all this information in and delineate out what is going to be the most effective use. I mean, that even comes down to the type of steak I'm going to have. Like,
Yep.
sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted
No,
to
that's totally fine.
confirm.
And that and I'm glad you shared that. And because it and part of that is weighing out, seeing so there's a mediator, there is a negotiator within Libra. And so it's the balance scales. It's like, well, I see both points of view. I see the good. I see, so it's kind of like that type of a thing, but that can get, yeah, you can get stuck in the weeds for sure.
And you get tired.
And
I find that it's like, I find when I have a lot of decisions to make that I end up getting very tired and just want, like, because I'm doing that constantly, that weighing.
right, right.
And then, so
Uh,
if there's too many decisions to make right now, like in my life, it's like I find at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, would somebody just make the decision for me? But then I wouldn't like that either. But
yeah, right, exactly. But there is, there is an aspect of that where I think, perhaps when you are asking for the opinions of others without like having being totally giving over your power, yeah, that might be helpful or it might not. Sometimes it might just add to the confusion.
right. Sometimes it does.
You're like, oh, so and so said this, and then so, oh God.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like, especially when we're talking about relationship here and love, that there also might be a real, like that strong pull towards relating is like, can also be, I really want to find the perfect partner. I want to, there is
Yeah.
a perfectionism that can live here. Um, and so yeah, it's just a mindful thing to sometimes being like, well, I think this can sometimes come up too with Sagittarius in a different way. But so I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, like that, yeah, that that perfection isn't necessarily going to be there. And I think part of softening that and allowing, obviously you want to have your standards, but that when you embrace the imperfections within you more wholeheartedly, because again, there is this aesthetic, this beauty, this balance, and that can be that there's a little bit of like where Libra energy can live on the surface. I'm not saying it has to, but so it's being able to go deeper. There is something that I'll mention in your chart that I think is part of the healing around that. But I would say too, balancing masculine and feminine energies, because that's balance, right? And then Libra is a bit more feminine, although not like, it's funny, not as strongly, even though Taurus is also ruled by Venus, is the bull, and you think like the bull, that's very masculine. Taurus is, I would say, a little more sort of on the level of feminine. Libra is again balancing those energies. How do I assert? How do I receive? How do I,
Yes.
like that continuous flow, really important to see in like a lot of different avenues. And certainly too, when you're engaging with dating or relating or, all of that. And really important because Libra is also an air sign. So there can be a way in which, there's an intellectuality, but you don't want it to be too much to the extreme. And so really learning to feel your heart and trust your feelings and your decisions.
Yeah, and that's a hard one, right? For me, that's a hard one, trusting my decisions. I do find like even after I've made a decision, I keep jumping back. Like, was that the best decision? Like, could it have been a better decision? Where could I have made a different choice? And that's really prominent right now. Like, what is the best choice? And it's throwing me off on just making a decision. Like I'm
Right.
trying to navigate all the moving parts.
Yeah. And you have, so I mentioned that Venus was your chart ruler, and it's in Capricorn, and it's next to what's called conjunct your moon. So your Venus and your moon, your romantic nature, your what you love, value, desire, how you feel good, more on a surface level, is having a relationship, like a more of an intimate relating with your moon, your inner self, your emotional nature, what you need on a deeper level. They also are happening both in the fourth house, which is quite an internal house. It has to do with home. So yes, your home, I feel is going to be something that is very valuable to you, and what we are just talking about. And ultimately like absolutely has to be, I think there's going to be a really strong energy of like safety and security. Like I've got to feel safe and secure.
Definitely.
And even, like on like your home, like your emotional home, your
Yes.
so and that really letting that, and I think this, because it's in the sign of Capricorn, yes, emotionally secure, but having a certain level of that financial material security too. So like these are important things to look at in the context of relationship as well. And again, they're talking to each other. So it's like, how do my values relate to like this deeper need for my, and maybe that it does require that you tune into your emotional self in order to refine and clarify the values and desires that you do have. We can speak just specifically from relationship here. And vice versa, that I feel good. I feel, this is where I can really fully love and embrace myself. And that, can help nourish your emotional self. I will say too that there's because Capricorn, especially Capricorn moon, like being able to relax and feel the full spectrum. And I think this even links back up with the Libra rising, feel the full spectrum, knowing that it's all beautiful, knowing that it's not something to be repressed or held back. Or because, the Libra rising might be inclined to like, well, I want to, keep the balance. And then the Capricorn's like, well, but I have an image to uphold. Is this okay?
Yeah.
What's my public image? That kind of a thing.
So, and basically what I
Yeah,
understand saying is it's balancing this internal and external world.
yeah,
Right? Like it
yeah,
seems that's what you're saying is it's
yeah,
balancing this and also balancing the perfectionistic part of like what's good enough.
yeah. And this goes not just for another human, but for you. Like,
Yeah.
because this is especially being attached to your moon. And the fourth house. This is more like getting in touch with your own emotions, and your moon is already there. And what was I going to say there? You just said something that sparked it, but oh well.
Saying my perfectionism balance.
Yeah, I think right. I feel like potentially with a Capricorn moon, there can be a repression of desires simply because there's a little bit more of a traditional flair to Capricorn, and that it requires, you know, it's like knowing that your ambition, your goals can really be best fed, and this is in every aspect of your life, can be really best nourished and fed as long as they are connected to your deeper values, your deeper wants, desires, and your true emotions.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So see if there's anything else I want to say about that. I actually will say something about it because your Mars is in Aquarius in the fifth house, and actually your Sun is in the fifth house as well. And the fifth house is like romance and, fun. And I feel like it's your inner child. It also has to do with actual children. It's like dating. So your Sun is there. So this is, again, indicative, I feel, of your persona, to your vitality, what you shine forward as someone who is interested in and works with people on this level inside of dating, romance, but also committed relationship, not just more of the dating
Right.
romance level. And then Mars being in Aquarius is, so here's where I'm looking at like the masculine and feminine in you of Venus and Mars. Your Venus in Capricorn, like I said, a bit more traditional, reserve. Mars, all about the action, the attraction, what turns me on, what gets me motivated to get out of bed, is in Aquarius. Like this is a much more unconventional energy. So
Right.
it could be that you do find yourself, you may have like these values that are rooted in tradition, but then be attracted, maybe even be attracted to men who um who have who are not like the status quo, who can like think for themselves, like and that would be a really big one, because Aquarius does deal with the mind. So it's like, do they think outside the box?
Yeah, and that's where I
We
get stuck lately, is because I don't know, it's that thinking outside the box with a particular with this relationship, and I would need somebody that is thinking more outside the box, because that's what I do. Like, I
Yeah.
don't just go after status quo. And
Yes.
it actually drives me crazy and I even have friends that are more extreme than I am. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's fascinating. Like, I didn't even get to, I didn't even think about it like that. But I need somebody who's like thinking outside the box and actually taking action,
Uh-huh.
not just talking about it. Like, I
Mhm.
call it like verbal masturbation. Like, but like actually just taking action to live that truth.
Yeah, sure. Well, and that stems back to authenticity, which I feel is very right. Like speaking, not just speaking it, but actually following through. That's authenticity. That's like walking your talk. Which for me, for me, in my eyes, is a very, very strong signature of Aquarius as well. Like authentic. It's gotta be authentic. Like not gonna cut it. So yeah, but inside of that, you may still be like, okay, but there's that certain level of like conventionality that needs to be like a foundation.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, it's hard. It is then there that balance between that conventional part of me and that eccentric or out of the box part of me, and how much like it's that dance between the two, because
yeah,
I do need that in a lot of ways that very conventional. I like conventional roles in my relationship.
right, right.
That's very comforting to me. Um, and yet I don't want that to carry on in every aspect of the relationship.
Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite similar in some ways to that, so I can understand that. So I mean, I would say like there is the capacity, I feel there is the capacity for both, to hold both of those energies. Um, and I think you've done a lot of work. So you named it too. You're like, that kind of that role, those roles, those conventional roles are important to you. But then, okay, great. But then there's like, what are we actually creating together? What is, what's he up to? What am I up to? Like, that whole synergy can be like totally different and totally.
That's a great example. And how are we going to live our lives together? What's that outside of the box look like? But the internal is traditional.
Yep. And I think too, how are you going to be honored for your uniqueness, seen and honored and given the freedom and the space to be that? Like, for sure. That's part of, I think, that Mars energy.
Definitely.
Um yeah, I'm just gonna, I think I'll just touch on one more little thing, and I'm literally just gonna touch on it because it could be a really big topic, which is Chiron. And this is the wound or the sensitivity that, and I want to say too, to those who are watching and maybe have been watching, that um we talked about some key placements during the series, like Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury is what we talked about. When I'm actually in the weeds, so to say, and like looking at charts, um, I'm also going intuitively off of like what feels appropriate that weaves into an individual's chart. So anyway, we're going to talk about the Chiron.
Right.
Because this is that sensitivity, and this is something that's innate and certainly comes up in the realm of relating in all different ways. And you've got your Chiron in Taurus, it's in the 8th house. And this can be very wound up with self-worth, with material worth, finances, and especially I think underscored because it's in the 8th house. And this can also, this it is your body, and I just hesitated because like I think both Aries and Taurus can actually be this body, maybe there's a body image thing that can come up, particularly like in the realm of more intimate situations with Chiron and Taurus. I would even say being able to speak your voice or voice your truth inside of more intimate engagements, because there is a throat chakra aspect. Taurus rules the throat chakra. Maybe even am I like being, I'm gonna say too, like really allowing for pleasure on all through the senses, that sensual connection to pleasure, like that, and particularly early on, Chiron can definitely evolve, but it's possible that like early on there was more of a like, okay, I can nurture others and and all of that and have compassion, but then that ability to come back and like relax, open yourself up to, what does please me and how can I receive that? And I think there's a component of that with Chiron, which I felt was maybe woven in with some of the things that we had talked about. Just seeing what else, but knowing that this is a power that you have to nurture others, to be able to even see the deeper needs, because this eighth house, the deeper needs of others, being able to reflect that back towards yourself, being able to, circle it back around.
Not just external, but an internal of what I'm doing externally. Bring it back to myself.
Yeah, this can also be a place where there's required, or you might feel there's deep transformations and even drama around things that deal with money, that deal with your possessions, that deal with the eighth house too is like real estate. So yeah, there's and sex and death and rebirth.
There's a lot in that eighth house.
Yeah, it is. It's like, but it's
Wow.
it's a very like kind of cathartic healing house, but it's like dive into the depths in order to rise up, not dive into the depths and get stuck and be like, oh God, drama, poor me. Like, all right.
And then being able to rise from that, like the Phoenix rise.
Transform.
And it's all going to be wrapped up around, like, for instance, it would be real estate, it would be finances, it would be.
Those are some themes, and particularly because Taurus also deals with the material. I think the finance material world could be especially strong having Taurus in, but Taurus is like money and finances in general. The eighth house is actually more, I didn't say this, about shared resources, things that are shared, or even dependencies that could be codependent or not, or, are they healthy, that kind of energy.
Okay. And that's between relationships or between finances?
That's in relating, like things that are, maybe shared with a partner or even anyone really for that matter.
Okay. There could be this codependency.
It doesn't have to be. I'm not saying that it has to be, but it's like, it's about those shared resources.
Okay.
And how are they, with that Chiron and Taurus how do you show up? How do you assert your needs? How do you speak your truth? How do you feel worthy inside of that?
In that shared experience. Got it. Okay. Amazing. This is so different than any other reading I've ever done. It's so interesting to look at it from a relational standpoint. And, and some of the struggles that I find internally that I'm having in relationships and all relationships that are a lot of key points you pointed out. in this reading. The thing and definitely the balance. I'm always like shifting perspectives. And
Yeah.
at the same time, you know, the one thing I'll say to my friends, they'll catch it before I will, is I'll say, how do I honor what this other person needs or wants, and at the same time not bypass myself and abandon what I want? I remember as a little girl, there was this one distinct moment, and this is like perfect example of a simple example of what it feels like internally for me
Yeah.
is I was swimming and we were on vacation. My family and I were on vacation, and I was swimming in the shallow end, and I had swimmies on. And there was this little girl that wanted to try my swimmies. Now, I did not know how to swim at the time. And so I was just like, yeah, I started giving her my swimmies. And the next thing, I'm drowning because I didn't know. So my mother saw I was drowning. Is that the right? Yeah. And she jumped in the shallow end. Like she was like, just went like, jumped right in. She felt silly afterwards, but in the moment, you know, you don't care. You're like, my daughter's drowning. I'm going to just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
ball in. So that's kind of what it feels like, is how do I honor my needs and understand what I need without sacrificing myself. Literally is that example.
That is that's a perfect example. And I would say we didn't talk about it much, but there is definitely some play here with your Pisces sun, and you also have Mercury in Pisces and your South Node in Pisces. So one of the keywords when I look at Pisces, and I think it also can relate to the Libra energy in a different way, is boundaries, healthy boundaries. Because there are no boundaries to Pisces energy. It's unboundaried. And it's also very much about seeing the good, seeing, like, I feel everyone, so I can have compassion for them. Even, you know, the seemingly most horrible person, you're like, yeah, but they're hurting, but they're, you know, like, do you know what I mean? That's the Pisces, which is a beautiful thing, but it requires, what are my boundaries? How do I establish that healthy level of container of boundary? Then within that, I think that discernment,
Yes,
for the Libra vacillation starts to get a little bit easier.
yes, that's beautifully said. It's that discernment. And as an adult, I had to also learn healthy boundaries and also discerning between how rigid I needed to be.
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
how
it's not
free
about
I
rigid.
needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and that I think when you think about, a beautiful analogy is like the cell membrane, right? Like cell membranes, if they get rigid, they're not going to be healthy. Like you don't want to have rigid cell membrane, but it's a membrane still. But it has this give and take, but I'm not going to let you in if you're not healthy to me. And that's, you know, the healthy cell can do that. The unhealthy cell, oh, they're going to be a little more permeable. Something's going to get in and they're like, oh shit.
Yes.
So that's how that's how I kind of like to visualize them. I mean, also having a fair amount of Pisces energy, I can.
You get it. You just feel it. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And I know you know, I know that space of like feeling like, oh, but I just need to block. No, that wasn't the solution either. You know, like
right. The cell is a beautiful example. That's a beautiful example of how to really filter in and out what you're going to allow in.
For sure.
And at the same time, the flexibility, right?
Yeah.
Move.
That healthy kind of expansion, contraction. I can be buoyant. Things can also kind of bounce off
Yes.
if needed.
Yeah.
And oh, there was something else I was gonna say. This is what happens. I like have these little, it's totally fine.
It happens to me too.
It was in regards to the more of the Pisces energy, but oh, I know what it was. This is where I feel too and I think this can go for a lot of people, but but specifically to some of the energies that we're talking about here is when if you do, like, once you kind of heal that part of yourself because I think when it's unhealed, those boundaries could just be rigid, 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 rigid. Doesn't matter. Because like if they're just rigid, they're just blocking everything. Like even if you think that you're not, you are. Once you get that, oh, that healthy, permeable, like, but healthy, kind of cell membrane, then I feel like that also allows you to go, okay, in this situation or with this person, do I start to feel a little rigidification of my membrane now? Like, am I feeling that? Which I think at that point, you now are more sensitized, and that's a cue. Oh, there might be something that's not right because I think there's now more of a healthy, perhaps protective trigger that's being put in. And as long as we can go, oh, that might actually be a cue or a message. All right, what happens, if I disengage or I honor that, or I even, rather than shutting down, I might need to communicate. I mean, some situations it might not be worth it, but
Right. Right. And to be able to then use that discernment as to what choice you're going to make in that moment, you're able to recognize, acknowledge, and then say, what choices do I have here? So you're starting to discern between the choices that you have and what's going to be right for you, knowing you. And that's where the healthy boundaries comes in.
Yeah. And I think, right. And I think in those situations, it's like, oh, that's my no. Oh, and that's okay.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
And then what's my yes? Yeah. So,
yes.
I like this cell thing. I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to use
I love the cell. Did you just come up with that?
I think I've used it before, but it's been a while. Like I haven't used it because I talk a lot about boundaries, especially in my readings that have heavier Pisces energy. Like it's a big topic, but I haven't talked about the cell in a while. I need to talk about it.
The cell is a good example. It's a really good example. And it's so reflective of life, right? So the survival of the fittest was because of flexibility.
Yes. Ability to adapt, which is a strength, is a superpower of Pisces. But to be a victim or a martyr or to just completely merge and self-sacrifice, that's the shadow side of
a Pisces.
Of adaptability, yeah. Or escapism. I'm just gonna leave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been fantastic.
Yay.
I just feel so at ease and dropped in. So thank you so much, Emily.
Yeah. It was such a pleasure, honestly. Like, of course. I love doing this. Especially for people I know and love.
Thank you, Anna. You're such a joy.
For anyone, really.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this with all of us and with me. It's just been a real absolute pleasure to be able to experience this reading in such a different way. And from this relational way, not just relational with a partner, but relational with myself.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
it's really, I love the way in which you approach astrology from this perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again. It was just I really feel like every time I get to do this, it's an honor. Um, it's intimate, so it's an
It is.
honor.
It's
It's an honor
it is
to
intimate. I feel very much like it's an intimate process. So yeah. So yeah, we'll see what we come up with next, Anna.
I know,
So
I
much fun
know.
doing these 5 series with you, and I'm so glad everybody got to join us and
Yeah,
see the playback. So to be continued.
to be continued. And yeah, and I definitely like, I know I don't want to speak for you, Danielle, but like, I welcome anyone to reach out to me anytime. Through, we're doing this on Facebook, so you can obviously see where I am on Facebook. I'm also fairly active on Instagram. And I'm at Mahayogini, MAHAYOGINI, Yogini, Mahayogini. So, you know,
Yes, you can reach out to either one of us. And if Anna, you want to put, because it's being streamed through my channels, if you want to put in the comments your information as well, where
yeah,
they
I'll do that.
as well as
And I'll repost it as well to my
perfect.
for
Perfect.
people to have fun with.
So much fun. All right,
Yeah.
Anna, thank you so much. And to be continued. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Such
you
fun.
all.
All right, bye-bye.